Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to talk to you today about the Spanish Civil War, 1936 to 1939, a cataclysmic conflict, the scars of which have not yet healed in Spain, and in some ways wasn't even resolved until 1975 with the death of the dictator General Franco. I'm not today going to go into the politics. We'll leave that for another time. I'm not even going to talk about organization and equipment. I will do that another time. Now, I'm going to talk to you about weapons and kit. In 1936, the start of the war, there were roughly 500,000 rifles in Spain. Now, the majority of these, and I'll show you, were of this type. This is the Spanish Mauser, based on the German Mauser, of course, the famous German military rifle of both World Wars. What is unique about this one is that it was actually made in Spain and in a particular caliber, made in 7mm caliber. That was the standard caliber which the Spanish army used. This would present both sides with great difficulties during the war. Once the war got started, both sides probably had an equal number of these weapons. The problem was that the size of the armies, of course, inevitably expanded exponentially. At the start of the war, the armed forces of the Spanish Republic could have been numbered in tens of thousands, including the army in Africa. By the end of the war, over 2 million men and women were in uniform, roughly divided equally between the two sides. Clearly, there would be need for many more firearms. Spain had a thriving firearms industry, mainly based in the north in the Basque Country, Oviedo, and La Coruña. This had grown considerably during the Great War, when weapons had been made under license for the French, particularly the Hotchkiss 1922 light machine gun and the 1914 heavy machine gun, both of which were magazine-fed weapons, and indeed both sides would deploy quite a number of these during the course of the Civil War. Mauser is an exceptionally fine weapon, robust, well-made, and indeed these will shoot today as well as they did when they were made. In an industrial war, however, what both sides need are standard calibers and a continuation of supply. The more complex the supply chain becomes, the more difficult it becomes to supply your men at the front. And both sides suffered significantly from this during the course of the war. Another weapon which was in the Spanish arsenal was the venerable German Gewehr 98. This was the classic German infantry rifle, Mauser obviously, which had been used throughout the First World War. It was originally chambered in 7.92mm, but the Spanish had rechambered or barreled quite a number of them before the war in their 7mm caliber. In the early stage of the war, the Republican side received a gift, a shipment of 20,000 rifles from Mexico. These are the Mexican Mausers, if you like. And indeed, happily for the Republic, these are also chambered in 7mm standard Spanish round. Prior to the introduction of the Spanish Mauser, the Spanish army had relied on these venerable beauties. This is the Remington rolling block, a single-shot breech loader which was around during the 19th century. These were manufactured in large numbers, and whilst a very robust weapon, an accurate weapon, it fired a black powder cartridge. And the black powder cartridge, of course, was very limited, hard to come by, and if you put a nitro round through the gun, then that could get very exciting. These were in 11mm caliber. Both sides had to look abroad for weapons. The Republic shopped in Poland and in Russia. They paid heavily to both. The Poles had no political sympathy with the Spanish Republic, though nominally the Russians did. Both, however, were strictly for cash, and the Soviets had very soon taken possession of the Spanish national gold reserves. A lot of the kit which the Poles and the Russians unloaded onto the Spanish was, to say the least, their back inventory. They got rid of a whole load of junk. They also did send some good quality weapons. Both the Poles and the Russians had amassed an eclectic collection of Allied weapons from the First World War. These included British 303 Lewis guns, which were still a highly effective light machine gun. Vickers 303 heavy machine guns. Russian Maxim machine guns, German P08 Maxims, and even French guns like the horrible little gun called the Shosha, which was a light machine gun. The Poles and the Russians sent a whole plethora of rifles, Mausers and Steyrs, but of course, again, these were not in the same caliber. There was, again, some fairly interesting back items came forward. The Poles actually sold to the Spanish some Legras rifles. Now, the Legras was a real survivor. As you can see, this is a proper Beaugest job. This was a single shot breech loader used by the French, adopted by them after their own failure in the Franco-Prussian War of 1870-1871. Again, it's a black powder weapon. Ammunition is therefore hard to come by. It's only single shot. Its range and accuracy compared to a modern nitro firearm are infinitely reduced. Happily, the Spanish also acquired some of these. This is the short magazine Lee Enfield. It has, unlike the Mauser, a detachable magazine. It has twice the capacity. It holds 10 rounds. That makes a big difference in the firefight. Also, it has the Lee bolt, which is a much finer and handier bolt, because the weapon can actually be aimed and fired from the firing position. I'm going to drop the weapon from the shoulder to chamber another round. The bolt action was actually invented by a borderer, James Paris Lee, in the 19th century, together with the stripper clip, which presses 5 rounds and then another 5 into the breech. These weapons in good condition would be particularly priced, perhaps even then still the best bolt action rifle on the market, if indeed you could get hold of them. Both sides shopped around for heavy weapons, that is for artillery, anti-tank guns, anti-aircraft guns, and mortars, and bought in on the world market. If you want to see a very good collection of these, then the castle in Barcelona has a marvelous array of Civil War firearms. And of course, there was still the indigenous Spanish production. The Spanish, in addition to producing Mausers, produced a range of high-quality semi-automatic pistols, the Astra and Star models. And again, these were mainly chambered for the 9mm round. Not the 9mm Parabellum, but a longer round, called amazingly the Largo. However, during the course of the war, again, a significant range of foreign, non-domestic automatic weapons, pistols came into the country, one of which was, of course, the venerable P08. This is the Luger 9mm Parabellum, designed by George Luger, introduced by the German army in 1908, and still in use throughout both world wars. Regarded as one of the finest, easiest to shoot automatic pistols of all time, it has an 8-round detachable clip, and if you're cheeky, you can get one up in the barrel. The toggle action makes it easy to use. It's a joy to shoot. On the other hand, this, like many German weapons, is slightly over-engineered, so it doesn't stand up well to dirt and filth, which of course is inevitably a part of trench and infantry warfare. Because the Spanish Civil War, although there were tanks and planes and big guns involved, was very much an infantryman's war or an infantrywoman's war. Revolvers, too, were in use. This is a Colt 38 Special. This is a civilian model. It has a 6-shot revolving cylinder and will fire single action, pull the trigger, or to fire double action, you pull the trigger, or single action, you have to pull the hammer back. Another popular pistol, and I'm wearing the holster for that, is the Tokarev. This was a Russian semi-automatic pistol, introduced in 1930. Again, it has an 8-round detachable clip for 9mm Parabellum. It's a simple blowback action, like most automatics, actually based on a design by Browning in 1903 with significant modifications. This was an extremely robust, reliable weapon and stayed in use with Soviet forces right until the 1950s. There would indeed be quite a few of these around. Quite early on, the Republic lost control of the arms manufacturing regions. The garrison of Oviedo went over to the nationalists, withstood a 4-month siege, and therefore weapons from that source were denied to the Republic. La Corona was quickly taken as well, and whilst the bulk of the arms industry was located in the Basque Country, which was generally pro-republic. The problem was that this was in an enclave and, of course, was cut off from the rest of the Republican forces. And just a final word about hand weapons. Knives were extensively used for trench fighting. Now, there was no specialist Fairbairn-Sykes fighting knife, but many World War I trench knives like this, or indeed privately purchased camping knives, and of course, homemade Spanish Toledo steel, that's a Victorian Bowie type knife, were also used. Now, next time, I'll be talking about kit and equipment.